here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome back into the 9 Route, everybody. Pat and Scott here with you for another waiver wire and start sit for week 4. We're looking to bring you something a little bit extra next week, where we've been talking about potential trade targets and things like that. And we were thinking that's something that after about a quarter of the season, you want to start looking at guys that, maybe are disappointing, or guys who are stepping up and, maybe trying to make some trades to improve your team. So we're going to try to work on that and get that to you within the next week or two on the podcast here. But today we're going to stick with the old waiver wire and start sits the way we've been doing it for the past few weeks. Again, we're recording prior to the Monday night game kicking off. So some of the stats, numbers that you may hear, just understand that the Eagles and Cowboys have not played their game yet. So, some of the numbers, if we give any from either of those two teams, just understand that, that we're going off of basically 2 weeks of games for those two teams.
Yeah. There's some impact players on both sides. Dallas has a very potent offense, the wide receiving core, running backs, the quarterback, obviously, and the Eagles as well do have some talent out there. So these stats are going to be a little gray until everything clears up after tonight. Hoping for a big Birds win, of course. I think that's going to happen. Jalen Hurts coming out game, going home to Texas. I'm going to put that one on the board right now. It's on the board.
Way to jinx it.
You are welcome. Thank you.
All right, so man, let's get right into it, because we are recording semi close to kickoff here, and we want to make sure that we don't miss a second of that game. So let's jump into our waiver wire.
Sure.
All right, so at quarterback, we have Daniel Jones. We had mentioned him last week as far as a waiver wire pickup, and he's still under 50% owned in most leagues, 39% NFL.com, about 46%, 45% in ESPN and Yahoo leagues. Jones is he didn't have a great game this past week, no touchdowns, but he's still the 9th overall quarterback in fantasy leagues. Again, pending 2 more quarterbacks to play. But I mean, Jones is just a guy who is going to get you those points with his legs. And, if he throws a touchdown or 2, that's just gravy for you. So he's one of those safer guys that you can generally play every week and not really have too much of an issue with worrying about him really submarining your team for the week.
Absolutely.
The second guy we're going to talk about, we did not talk about last week, is Sam Darnold from the Carolina Panthers. He is actually very scarcely owned, 6.5% in NFL.com, 9% on ESPN, and 22% on Yahoo leagues. And as of right now, he's the 11th overall quarterback. He's had a really good rapport with DJ Moore, who has been sort of lighting it up this year. With McCaffrey being down for a week or 2, which we'll get to in a little bit more detail later, but that could take a little bit of his upside away. But he's still been a really solid quarterback, and the Carolina Panthers defense looks like they're pretty real. So, keeping other teams off the board allows the offense to have the ball a lot more, and gives Darnold and that Carolina offense a better chance to put points on the board for you.
Yeah, no, they speaking of Carolina, personal vested interest with the running back getting hurt this week, but to see what they've been doing with Darnold, and it's anybody that gets away from Adam Gase seems to be a success story. So again, and we know he had potential in New York, but they just made a trade today, speaking of defense, where they lost J.C. Horn possibly for the season with the broken foot. And they got C.J. Henderson from Jacksonville for a 5th rounder, and Dan Arnold, who had been previously mentioned as a possible guy in our league. So that defense gets better. Carolina is one of those teams, just like the Raiders. It's so far so good. See how they do.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been one of the surprise teams, being 3-0 so far this year. So, and part of that is Darnold. He's not turning the ball over, and the defense is playing well.
Yeah. You could put a little faith. Pick him up.
On the other end of that perfect start, we're also suggesting to pick up, at least put him on your bench, and again, if you're one of those teams where understand that if we're talking about quarterbacks we understand in one quarterback leagues, you got a guy like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, you're not picking these guys up to start them. But if you were one of those managers who drafted, say, like a Ryan Tannehill or, even a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, because, the Steelers had all these weapons on offense and you thought that, Roethlisberger would come through for you. Grab a guy, one of these guys, Jones, Darnold, the next guy we're going to talk about, Jared Goff. Goff has actually looked pretty good. Detroit has been in some shootouts. Their defense is pretty bad, which sort of allows them to, or forces them, I should say, to play catch up. And Goff has been doing a fairly decent job catching up and putting some numbers on the board.
Yes, just totally agree 100%. He's sixth right now in the league in pass attempts with 123. So yes, they're going to be behind in a lot of games. And quietly, the whole Lions offense, yes, Jared Goff, who is still, to me, a mannequin, but he puts up some numbers. He did okay with the Rams, but they're quietly like a fantasy gold mine. You look at both of the running backs, it's all underneath. It's all dump off in prevent defenses when they're down. They did put up a pretty good fight against Baltimore and lost to a record-setting 66-yard field goal. But again, it's the Lions, so that was bound to happen to them probably a couple more times this year too. Goff definitely should be involved, possible bye weeks, when you need to replace your quarterback. And again, he could end up being just a better matchup against a team, not maybe in a positive way, but if the Lions look like they're going to get blown out, Jared Goff might throw 45, 50 times a game. It's going to get you points.
Exactly. Wins and losses don't matter in fantasy for the players that are on your fantasy team, as long as they're scoring points. And Goff does. He has been doing that. So,
yeah, it's not about the real NFL. That's why it's fantasy. So, yeah, right. We're not saying the Lions are good, but Jared Goff's going to get you points and maybe get you a victory. And again, if you're in a super flex or a 2-quarterback league, he should definitely be. He might even be starting for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Those super flex and 2 QB leagues, he should be rostered in 100% of those leagues. If he's not, and you're in one of those leagues, for sure, go and grab any of the guys that we mentioned. Could potentially be out there on the waiver wire. So definitely grab those guys and slide them in your lineup. They're all top 13 options at this point in the season.
And thank your league mates for being completely stupid about it.
One guy I want to mention real quick. He's owned in most leagues. He doesn't meet the sort of 50% owned threshold that we kind of use when we're looking at waiver wire pickups. But go check. There might be some leagues out there where Kirk Cousins may still be available to you. The Minnesota defense has been middle of the road. They haven't been terrible. They have played some pretty tough offenses, but Cousins has had to keep up with those offenses, and he's done it pretty well. I mean, the Vikings could very easily be 3-0. Cousins he's got weapons. He's putting points on the board. He's actually the 4th quarterback overall as far as scoring in fantasy football. Usually guys like that don't stick around for very long, but if he is available in your league, go ahead and scoop him up, and you can play Kirk Cousins with confidence most weeks.
Yeah, no, legitimately, you look at what he's throwing to with obviously Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and now the KJ Osborne thing is quietly becoming a thing. They finally have a third wheel, a slot receiver, whatever you want to call it, but they have a third wide receiver option in the backfield there. It's pretty solid. Captain Kirk is, top of the pops right now. He's a top 5 quarterback in most of your stats through the regular NFL. And again, with what they're putting up right now, if he keeps this up, he's going to be putting up 25, 30 points a game. He's going to be a major factor. And again, it's always been underappreciated, that middle of the road, 12 to 17 maybe in the rankings, but he's been putting up points. He's been putting up yardage. He's been throwing for touchdowns. So again, sometimes you have to look for that on the corollary. If the wide receiver is great and a top 5 guy, the quarterback's getting on the ball. So it's just a matter of time. Pick up Kirk Cousins, get him on your roster.
Go ahead. I'll let you start the running backs off. I feel like I'm taking up all the FaceTime here.
Thanks. Yeah, no, we're FaceTiming. You folks are hearing us. Down the road, you may get to meet us personally like that, but
they don't want to look at us. Trust me.
Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks.
I didn't say you. I just put the mask on. Talking about running backs and your waiver wire. Obviously, again, like I said a few minutes ago, I have vested interest. I have Christian McCaffrey in 2 of my leagues, and to see that he was in a tent for 20 minutes kind of made me want to put some holes in walls. But at the same time, from having him last year and seeing what went down, and it was a week to week and it never panned out, and you couldn't get him on IR. Last year, I had Mike Davis, and he was huge. He played himself into a great free agent contract with Atlanta. But this year, seeing what just happened, and now they're saying just a couple of weeks, it looks like you got to go out and you got to get Chuba Hubbard. It's fun to say. Just say it with me. Chuba Hubbard, Chuba Hubbard, Chuba Hubbard. Yep. Say it 5 times fast.
It's like that old bubble gum. Hubba bubba.
It sounds like it. I know exactly. And then they do have Royce Freeman as well. Veteran presence, definitely, if this kid can't handle the load. But once he got pressed into service in the first half, it was getting his feet wet and checking the temperature of the pool. But then he dove in. He had a nice game for them. And again, with a calming presence at quarterback with Sam Darnold, who has weapons across the field. He really didn't even target Robbie Anderson during the game. It was just kind of him almost putting the team on his back, because I think everybody turned around and saw McCaffrey go down. Chuba Hubbard, Oklahoma State product. I believe he ran for over 2,000 yards. He's definitely on their radar. He was a guy that was brought in to be a 1A or a 2. Not a full committee with CMC there, but if his health is going to be an issue from year to year, they're not going to be worried and making sure that they have a guy in there. I think you need to go out 100% based on that offense and the way they're moving the ball right now. Chuba Hubbard should be a priority one. If you have number one waiver wire priority right now, make the move. If you have to make a trade for him and try to sneak him off somebody who's got the depth, get him right now, because CMC's hamstring could be a week to week. Last year was week to week, and he only played 4 games. So again, Chuba Hubbard needs to be on your roster, probably through waivers. Again, somebody may have picked him up just to spoil a handcuff or something like that. Get him on your team.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where, when you talk about whether or not to handcuff your running back as far as, one of your starters and taking the backup just in case of injury, I've always kind of viewed that as wasting a roster spot. But when you have a guy like Hubbard who is going to step in and maybe not do what Christian McCaffrey does, but he's going to get a considerable amount of the looks that Christian McCaffrey would have gotten had he been in the lineup. There's almost no way that he isn't going to do something, especially if you're in a PPR league. He's probably going to get you somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 targets a game, because Darnold is just used to running the offense with Christian McCaffrey in it. And he's going to look for his running back out of the backfield. That's just sort of built into this offense that they run. So he's definitely a piece that you could pick up and start immediately and start pretty much for the entire time that McCaffrey is out. And then a guy that you are probably going to want to hold on to, like you said, in case, this hamstring thing lingers. As thin as the running back position is, he absolutely, if he's out there, he's definitely the number one priority in your league.
Next, we're going to move to the running back. He was mentioned last week, and he's been quietly mentioned as part of the committee meeting that is the Houston Texans running back room. Right now, he is tied for 6th in the league before the Monday night game in rushing attempts with 46. That Mark Ingram, the second, he still seems to just be the, if you want to call it the one, but he seems to be the guy that they really are riding, so to speak, hard. Most people in your league probably picked him up in the last week or two just to make sure they had the top dog in that 3-man rotation that they have. Going into the season, I think a lot of people felt Phillip Lindsay was going to be the guy because he had been pretty productive with Denver, but never seemed to get over the hump, had some injury issues. And David Johnson has just been left a bad taste in your mouth ever since the broken hand injury that he had the big 2016 year. And, everybody thought he was going to be the next guy, and it just hasn't turned around ever since. But some of these guys get cooked kind of quick. Again, you're looking at Mark Ingram. He's a guy who's just been running over people his whole career. He may not last as long, kind of gives you that Frank Gore vibe of just that guy that just keeps plodding ahead, and he's the goal line guy, and he just does what needs to get done. Again, you're talking about a team in Houston that quietly competitive, but they're probably not going to win a lot of games. But if they stay in them and they're not getting blown out, they'll run a balanced offense. And again, he's not a receiving threat out of the backfield, but yeah, you could definitely see him get involved. They're riding Davis Mills right now while Tyrod Taylor's out. But I think that offense will probably go through him for most of the season as long as they keep doing what they're doing. Mark Ingram needs to be on your roster if he isn't already.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add there. I think you pretty much covered everything on Ingram. So I just want to real quick mention, take a look on your waiver wire and see if Zach Moss is available in ESPN and Yahoo leagues. He's a little bit more than 50% owned. On NFL.com, he's only about 38% owned. If he's available, go out and grab Zach Moss. I would say this: if Moss is out there, and we didn't start at the top with him because of the fact that he is majority owned in some of these platforms that you're using, but if he is available, I would actually pick up Moss before I picked up Hubbard, just due to the fact that Moss, I believe, is going to have a role in that offense no matter what happens, whereas Hubbard's role will sort of be diminished to the backup again once McCaffrey becomes healthy. But Moss has scored 16 plus fantasy points in the last 2 games. Not quite sure what happened in week 1. Maybe it was some sort of disciplinary thing or just some sort of roster construction thing that Buffalo was doing with, they did have a lot of wide receivers active for that game. So I'm not really sure, but since Moss has come back in weeks 2 and 3, he has quietly taken over the snaps, the rushing attempts, and the targets. Honestly, in the backfield, I think him and Singletary are 1 target apart, but he seems to be the guy that they're leaning on a little bit more than Singletary, and he's by far being more productive with the touches that he's getting than Devin Singletary. So if Moss is available, go ahead and grab him up, and I wouldn't have any problem starting him, honestly.
No, going into the season, I was pretty high on him. I liked him last year. I had him on my roster, and I remember towards the end of the year, he seemed to almost start to take things over, and then he had an injury that just kind of abruptly ended his rookie year. And you say, okay, maybe he bounces back, maybe it doesn't. Devin Singletary is a very solid running back, and they're both in a terrific offense there in Buffalo. To see him not play week 1, Pat, you said it, and I totally agree. There had to be something, where there's smoke, there's fire. Something was said, something was done that just put him on the bench, maybe to let him know that, it's still the NFL and you got to be a big boy and earn it. But to see him come out and miss week 1 and then turn around and right now still be on like the first page statistically with a lot of other running backs, already getting a touchdown, already being involved. He did lose a fumble, but again, he's definitely just going to be a focal point in that offense. And it's crazy to see that, he's actually looking at him right now, he's got 3 touchdowns already.
Mm-hmm.
3 touchdowns in 2 games, and he already missed the first game. I mean, so we could put that fumble off to the side, but yeah, I mean, and knowing what you have in Buffalo, and I know we're going to touch on another member of that team that's a waiver guy in wide receivers. It's kind of scary. I mean, we've seen them stepping it up year after year, and this could probably be a year that you see Buffalo make it beyond and maybe get over the hump. I know that we have a friend of ours in our league who is a big Buffalo Bills fan. So he's, even if he loses in fantasy, he's going to be probably a very happy camper, I think, probably come maybe February. But yeah, Zach Moss, if he's out there, God forbid, again, high five your league mates for just being, not able to recognize talent. Zach Moss, pick him up immediately. I would even take him personally. I would take him over Chuba Hubbard, even though it's more fun to say than Zach Moss. But yeah, Zach Moss, if he's out there, pick him up right now.
It's a very boring name to say, but very productive.
Yes.
Yeah. So speaking of Buffalo, moving into wide receivers, Emmanuel Sanders is only about 23% owned in most leagues. He's just a guy who you weren't really sure. I wasn't really sure after the year that he had last year in New Orleans, whether his career was kind of over or not. Obviously, moving to Buffalo in this high-powered passing offense, it's apparent that his career is far from over. He looks outstanding. He's Buffalo's deep threat. He is he has the 3rd most targets on the team behind Beasley and Stephon Diggs. You can't deny his involvement in the offense. And I think there's a few offenses out there, and we're going to touch on another one here in a minute, but there's a few offenses out there that you just want pieces of that offense because you're never really sure which one is going to have a huge game when. Buffalo is definitely one of those offenses. You want to get as many pieces of these offenses as you can, because if one guy goes down, if Cole Beasley gets hurt or Stephon Diggs goes down, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders could vault into a top 12 wide receiver position on a weekly basis if something like that were to happen. So if he's available, definitely go out there and snag him up.
I actually had him and then just kicked him off to the side, thinking I was smarter than I was in our league. And, right now, like you said, the presence that he brings as a veteran, and I think some people thought maybe he was a little cooked, a little washed up in New Orleans. And I think it's hard to move to a new team and get right into a fixture and a focal point. But to see that Josh Allen already has a pretty strong rapport with him, knowing that you have Diggs, you have Cole Beasley, who are still getting the ball. That offense is built to look for the best options. It has, like you said, looking for these teams that just kill it on offense. They kind of have that Kansas City vibe where, yes, even if you have, a Mecole Hardman, and a guy who was coming out of camp was like a Byron Pringle. Like, you want some guy that's from that offense, but to know it's a guy like this, who, especially down the road, when you're getting close to getting into the playoffs, your fantasy playoffs in fantasy, but in the NFL as well, he's going to be a guy that probably gets leaned on pretty hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another guy who falls into this same category is Sanders. And again, a guy who is just on a high-powered offense that you want to have pieces of. There's actually two guys that we can talk about. The first one I'm going to talk about, though, is
there's a lot on this team.
I know. Yeah. The first guy is Christian Kirk. He's second on the team. Well, third on the team in targets. DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green are first, but he's only got one less target than Hopkins and AJ Green. He actually has the most receptions of any of the wide receivers and has already scored 2 touchdowns. Christian Kirk is just a guy who, he's not an every down player. He's not on the field for every snap, but when he is out there, Kyler Murray is looking for him and he's finding him a lot of the times. I mean, Kirk is, I've rewatched the Cardinals games, everything up until this past week. I haven't rewatched that game yet against Jacksonville, but in the 2 games that they played, Christian Kirk is just wide open. Like there's so many plays there's plays where he's wide open and Murray just goes to somebody else. And, whether he doesn't see him or whether, in some cases, other players are wide open. I think with Murray, as he's getting more comfortable in the league and getting more comfortable playing quarterback in the NFL, his first year with DeAndre Hopkins was hyper targeted. Like, he was throwing to DeAndre Hopkins 12. I think that year Hopkins averaged like 10 and a half targets a game. Yeah. This year, everything is so evenly spread out between AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, and Rondale Moore. Literally the 4 of them are only separated by 3 targets. And that just shows that Kyler Murray, he's not depending on, the big name out there in DeAndre Hopkins. He is finding the open guy. He is comfortable. And Kirk and, the next guy we're going to talk about, they're just guys that you just need to get on your roster, period.
Couldn't agree more. I know I've had him over the last year or two where he's a big play guy. He's a home run guy, but to see him now come into his own with the rest of that offense and finally, see him reap the rewards of playing next to, yes, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green himself, Rondale Moore comes along, and it doesn't seem like there's while there's competition, it's Kyler Murray going back there and pulling the strings and making sure to get the ball to, like you said, the guy who maybe he might get passed by you. He's like a second, third read. He's locked in. He already sees the better option based on the matchups and the routes run on the play. But yeah, Christian Kirk, I was forced to put him into my starting lineup over Antonio Brown, who was out with COVID. And it helped me big time. And he's always had that ability to have a week where he puts up some serious points. Looking at our league, I believe he's wide receiver 15 right now. And again, he's leading all those wide receivers right now. And you've had a little bit of a hiccup with DeAndre Hopkins not being quite 100% healthy. AJ Green moving over there, obviously the veteran presence. Rondale Moore being the new kid in town and the hot name, so to speak. Defenses can't keep up when they have this much talent. Like we just talked about with like having a Kansas City player on your roster, maybe a Green Bay player on your roster. When you pick up players, you're looking for that. Unless you have the top banana, like the best guy on the worst team. Like if you have a Brandon Cooks from Houston, who's just everything's funneled through him because it's just the only guy they have. That's a different story. But if you're able to pick up a third or fourth option on a team that's putting up, 400 or 500 yards of total offensive game, they're scoring 30 to 35 points a game. We talked about Minnesota this year and how their third wide receiver is a legit fantasy option. This is a guy who has been the player with that potential for the last year or two. To see him finally realize it and move up the charts, Again, I have him on my team. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. Christian Kirk should be rostered immediately on that team. Again, he's an injury away from being wide receiver one, if not already. Again, he's already leading the team. He's a top 15 wideout right now on like NFL.com.
Also, AJ Green on that team.
Yeah, it's just you could go through the whole roster. It's so scary.
Green isn't available in as many leagues, which is why he's not really. I don't want to say he's not on our list. But we are going to just mention him because, again, he does lead the team in targets, him and DeAndre Hopkins. And he actually has more receiving yards than Hopkins and is the second most targeted player downfield in the NFL right now. He's actually averaging 18.1 yards per reception. So Green is just another guy where, every week may not be AJ Green week, but if you are deciding between him and say somebody like, Mike Davis or something like that in your flex, if you need the upside, AJ Green is going to be a guy that you're going to want to throw in your lineup.
Yeah. He looks like he lost like 5 or 6 years of wear and tear. I think you looked at what he did in Cincinnati. It was him and Andy Dalton. They had Corey Dillon for like a smidge of a second, and then he moved on to New England. Mixon wasn't quite in play enough yet. It was really just a 1-2 punch that they had. But he put up the numbers every year. And then eventually it just wore him down physically. He wasn't healthy and he kind of, knew maybe the writing was on the wall that they wanted to move on to a younger team. Obviously, they've improved. They have a great quarterback. They have a great core of wide receivers right now. He was a small part of that last year for the last year or two. But to see him come over to this team and be just reinvigorated, it just really looks almost like fountain of youth, because they're not going to lean on him for 10 to 12 targets a game. If Murray's spreading this out and he's able to find everybody for, you figure Murray's going to throw the ball 30, 35 times a game. So if he's spreading that out minimum over 3 to 4 wide receivers, and, you have Chase Edmonds coming out of the backfield. Yeah, with all those options, the defense has to figure out who's the guy we got to stick. And imagine being a defense and going, okay, well, there's DeAndre Hopkins. There's AJ Green. This Kirk guy's pretty good. The Rondale Moore kid's going to shred us. Oh, and they can still do it out of the backfield. And if we get all of them covered, we still got to make sure Murray doesn't run for 25 yards and a touchdown. Right now, I can't imagine a defensive coordinator having a good night's sleep for a couple of days before playing against Arizona. They look scary. I mean, right now on paper, you look at some of the teams and you're saying Arizona, Buffalo, the Raiders, these teams and even Carolina, like that could be your Final Four right now based on the way the league's going. So, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, you're almost getting into the point where you want Andy Isabella, who's like their 5th receiver. Just keep him around, keep him on the hot plate there, just so to speak, because somebody goes down with an injury that's just going to be next man up. But the way that they're able to spread the ball around and put points up, AJ Green, if not him, Christian Kirk, get these guys on your roster. There shouldn't be an Arizona Cardinal skill player sitting out there.
All right. So moving into tight end, just a couple mentions here. Evan Ingram coming back off of his injury. He saw 6 targets in the first game back, which isn't a ton, but it's enough to kind of make you feel like he might be involved in this Giants offense, which is at the moment just the Giants offensive receiving weapons are dropping like Baltimore's running back. Galladay hasn't truly been 100% healthy the whole season. Shepard and Darius Slayton went down in week 3 with injuries. Barkley still doesn't look completely back to 100%. He still seems like he's just a little afraid to kick it into 6th gear. Ingram could be the guy. I mean, especially for the next couple of weeks, if you're hurting at tight end, you can go out and grab Ingram and keep him on your bench, or maybe even throw him in your lineup in the hopes that the other Giants pass catching options either don't play or are playing hobbled. Ingram has been the focal point of this offense before and could do that again.
I can't disagree with you there. I mean, like you said, seeing the injury bug bite them, they're kind of getting thin. I know last week I think I remember talking about maybe keeping Kyle Rudolph nearby based on the offense and the fact that Ingram hadn't been healthy, and then to see him come out and get obviously the looks that he gets based on the position and the potential for a few years now. He seemed like he's going to be that tight end that gets to that next level, maybe a borderline top 5 guy. they have to throw to somebody. There's no getting around it. I mean, and if you're down to, fourth, fifth, sixth wide receivers, and you're picking up guys off the practice squad, or you're looking for, veteran tryouts, and you see this unfortunately happen for somebody who knows the playbook, knows the quarterback, and again, if they can have a good rapport and he trusts them, yeah, Evan Ingram easily should be a guy who's going to get lion's share of the targets, be the go-to guy in the red zone, probably just get you 10 points on accident just from getting, a 20-yard touchdown reception, things of that nature. There'd be no reason to not have him there. And with bye weeks coming out, if you're a one tight end guy, having Evan Ingram involved nearby on your roster, pick him up. It won't hurt if you feel like it's somebody that you want to keep nearby. Because again, the tight end pool gets pretty thin pretty quick. Right now, you're already kind of seeing that where some of the big names haven't panned out, and some of these unsung guys, they have a good week or two. You get the right matchup, Evan Ingram, he could win your week for you.
All right, let's get into our start sits then for the week.
You got it. Can't wait.
Starting at quarterback, who's your quarterback start of the week?
Ironically, the gentleman starting in about 20, 25 minutes. I like Jalen Hurts against Kansas City going into week 4. I know for some people, he's an automatic start based on where you draft him. But for some people that have a stud quarterback already in play, a Josh Allen, a Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson, an Aaron Rodgers, and he's your insurance policy, he's your trade bait, that's a different story. Kansas City is 31st against the quarterback. Their defense has given up 457, 481, 352. They've given up 29 points, 36 points, and 30 points. Justin Herbert just shredded them over this weekend. And they're worried about outscoring you, not stopping you. And if you're going to give a guy like this the ability to do that, you saw what Lamar Jackson did. Not saying Jalen Hurts is Lamar Jackson, but you saw what he was able to do and step up and really just take that game over at the end and win it for them. And if they're going to have issues with turnovers, Jalen Hurts being a dual threat quarterback, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, right now, they may not win the game, but Jalen Hurts would be a no-brainer. He's probably going to be a top 3 quarterback next week against Kansas City.
All right, and I'm going to go with a guy we talked about a little bit earlier in the waiver wire. I'm going to say to start Sam Darnold this week. I know that we talked about how good Carolina's defense has been, but they really haven't played anybody as high-powered as they're going to play next week in Dallas. Again, Dallas is just, I target them every week as far as my start sits because they're going to score for the most part, and they're going to give up a lot of points for the most part. So you got a good shot every week against them. I think that the connection between Darnold and DJ Moore is real, obviously, like we talked about earlier. And even with McCaffrey out, I think this could be a week where Robbie Anderson shows back up. This could be a week where you see the rookie Terrace Marshall Jr. Also getting a little bit more involved. And I think that, Dallas' secondary is still pretty bad. And I think that this could be a fairly high scoring game. As good as Carolina's defense has been, I think this could definitely be a little bit more of a shootout. And I like Sam Darnold on the other side if you're looking for a QB streaming option.
Yeah, no, don't disagree at all.
All right, so who do you have for your sit?
My sit this week is, and we've touched on different parts of the offense there. I'm going to sit Ryan Tannehill against the New York Jets. And I know you're saying, well, it's the Jets. Of course, he's probably going to have a great game. You have A.J. Brown out with a hamstring. You have Derrick Henry being that guy in that offense. And this is even where I think that Jeremy McNichols could get more involved. They're number 3 right now against the quarterback, whether or not that's defensive because of Robert Saleh being the coach. But I think it's a little more because Jets tend to be behind big time in a lot of their games. So the quarterback does some damage in the first half, and they're just getting dominated on the other side of the ball. So the quarterback doesn't have to drop back and throw and bring his team back. So almost like we talked about the converse of Detroit being behind in games, I feel like the Tennessee with this game could be far enough ahead early enough and just decide to plod the ball, control the ball, and then beat up poor little Zach Wilson, who was the target of a pretty rough TikTok that I saw on Twitter with I think it was a 12-year-old kid breaking down the entire Jets offense, failing, which is just priceless because he was dead on with everything, but it was still hilarious. Tannehill, I just don't think they're going to try to risk too much with him missing one of his top wide receivers. I just don't see Tannehill putting up 25, 30 points. I see him having a pedestrian game, just enough to win, managing the game because they're going to be totally in control on both sides of the ball. So I would sit Tannehill this week if you have a better option, possibly a better streaming option like a Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's a great point. The Jets haven't really been giving up a ton of quarterback points, passing yards, any of that stuff. So I'm going to sit a guy that I said to start last week, and this isn't me losing any confidence in him. It's just it's really the matchup. I'm going to say to sit Daniel Jones this week. He's going up against the Saints, and they have just been you saw what they did week 1 to Aaron Rodgers. I know that, that was maybe a little bit more of the Packers sort of not being in sync after a funky training camp and offseason with Rodgers, but they've been good against quarterbacks in weeks 2 and weeks 3 as well. And with the banged up receiving core in New York, I unfortunately don't see the Giants scoring many points, and I don't see Danny Dimes dropping many dimes. He's going to be Danny Nichols on Sunday. He's just not.
Well done.
He's just not. I'm not confident in starting him this particular week. I'm not saying he's obviously we talked about picking him up if he's still on your waiver wire. Pick him up and put him on your bench. Don't pick him up and start him against the Saints. All right. What about your running back start for this week?
Some people may already have this guy involved as a flex, and that's fine. But I feel like you could be confident enough to almost put him in an RB2 at this point. And it's not a new name. It's Nyheim Hines from Indianapolis. They're going against the Miami Dolphins, who are number 31 against the running back right now. He's pretty much involved in that offense as much as Taylor. Now, not as much out of the backfield. 16 carries for Hines, 32 for Taylor. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, who is probably a first-round pick for a lot of people in fantasy, if not like a high 2. He just hasn't been really doing it. Doesn't even have a touchdown yet. It's been kind of stymied as the focal point of the offense, which seems obvious. But Nyheim Hines, for those that have been scoring at home for the last couple of years, is really good and adept at receiving out of the backfield. He does have 16 receptions out of the backfield already compared to 11 for Taylor, and he's already got a touchdown. I feel like against Miami with this kind of an offense, granted, Taylor might have his breakout game and get comfortable. Carson Wentz has been looking for a way to win. They're 0-3. He's new to the team, but he's always been a guy who will get his running back involved in a passing game out of the backfield. To me, Nyheim Hines, I think, is going to really have that dual threat game that you drool over for a running back when you draft him for running and receiving and touchdowns. He's getting the looks in the red zone. I wouldn't start him over Jonathan Taylor, but I would start Nyheim Hines as a flex and possibly even an RB2 if you're flipping a coin this week.
I am going to actually go with Josh Jacobs this week. Now, this is assuming that Jacobs comes back off of his injury, which it seems like he's going to be okay. Going up against the Chargers, I know that the Raiders have been passing the ball a lot and not really running a ton, but I think that John Gruden is a lot smarter than me, especially at the game of football. And the Chargers, the way the Chargers built their defense was to beat the Chiefs, which obviously worked this past week. They are a very small, very fast defense. Their linebackers are not very big. Their safeties are not very big. They have given up the most rushing yards in the league and the 7th fewest passing yards. And I'll remind you, they just played the Chiefs and are still 7th in passing yards given up. So the Chargers are built to stop the pass, not built to stop the run. And I believe that the Raiders are going to have to run the ball if they want to have a chance in this game. If Gruden and Derek Carr come out and keep going with this throw happy offense that they've been going with the past few weeks, I think the Chargers are going to blow them out. So I do think that they're going to have to run the ball. And I like Jacobs to get a touchdown this week.
There you go.
All right. So let's go to the sits for running back.
Yeah. Mentioned them previously when I talked about Chubb Hubbard. Mike Davis, he's going against the Washington.
Are we seeing how many times you can say that in one episode? Is that because I haven't been keeping track? I'm going to have to go back and do that.
I'm thinking of redoing the whole Amadeus song from the 80s and just Chubb Hubbard, Chubb Hubbard, Chubb Hubbard, Chubb Hubbard, Chubb Hubbard. Yeah, it's, and to see how sober you sound when you're saying it. Mike Davis, free agent signing from Atlanta. He's going against the Washington football team this week. They are one of the top 10 defenses right now against running backs. not a shocker. One of the biggest reasons is a name that has been, I guess, the bane of the existence of a lot of people. I know Matthew Berry joked about it recently too, who's like the godfather of fantasy. But Cordarrelle Patterson is becoming a thing. Took a long time, but he is right now getting the looks in the red zone because he's a multi-dimensional player. Davis has some of that ability, but he doesn't have the speed that a player like Patterson has, who can play wide out, do the special teams, be an overall skill guy. To me, Mike Davis right now, he's in a bad spot. It's a shame. They have a young, banged up offensive line. You have a veteran quarterback who's just trying to find his way right now after you took away his best weapon. The tight end, I had him, highly touted Kyle Pitts. Like that offense, the fact that they beat the Giants the other day just says how bad the Giants are as a team. And as an Eagles fan, I'm pretty happy with that. But I would sit Mike Davis this week against the Washington football team. I just don't see him putting up any type of numbers. And if anybody from that position does, it's going to be Patterson.
Yeah, everybody wondered before the season if the Falcons were going to go out and draft or sign a running back to sort of supplant Davis as the starter, and it looks like there was already one on their roster, and nobody realized it. All right, I'm actually going to piggyback your sit from last week, and I'm going to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire against Philadelphia. He had a good game this week. Finally, 1 out of 3, I guess, ain't bad, but against Philadelphia, I don't see it happening. The Eagles they're a good defense. We'll see how good they are tonight against Dallas. The game got the highest over under on the week. And usually when these Vegas lines get up over 55, which is where this game is right now, it just means that there's going to be a lot of passing. Both teams are going to be scoring. And as much as CEH is going to be a part of, their offense moving forward, they just haven't really been throwing him the ball out of the backfield. The Eagles' run defense has been outstanding so far this year, and I just don't see Clyde having a real big impact on the game. Now, could it be one of those weeks where the Chiefs get down and he runs, 2 1-yard rushing touchdowns and makes me look stupid like Antonio Gibson did last week? Sure, that's possible. But if that's what I'm banking on, I would rather find a better option somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
All right, so who are we starting at wide receiver?
I am looking at Jalen Waddle. Everybody, Waddle, baby, Waddle, baby, Waddle, baby, Waddle. There he is. Again, you're looking at a guy, Jacoby Brissett, being the quarterback of record right now. Tua is out with an injury. He definitely got some people involved, and it looked like underneath work. Jalen Waddle had 12 receptions for 58 yards. So he averaged under 5 yards a catch, but damn if he didn't look for him every time underneath. So, in a sense, it's almost like second teamer quarterback looking for that guy, wanting to get him involved based on the coverage, maybe, whatever the case may be. To me, Jalen Waddle, if he's going to be a guy who's going to get 13 targets, just boom, here you go with this quarterback who now knows to look for him as a viable option, as a Cooper Kupp-ish, as a Hunter Renfrow. We joked about Braxton Berrios, like these volume guys underneath, and knowing the skill set that he has to break a play, you could probably start him with ease this week because he's going against the Indianapolis Colts. They're one of the bottom of the barrel teams against wide receivers. But again, looking at that, he's a number 1 overall pick. To me, it's a no-brainer. He should easily be a flex. He could probably be a wide receiver 2 this week, unless you have a better option. Jalen Waddle, start him with confidence.
Absolutely. I'm going to go with Corey Davis. I know that he didn't really have a good week against the Broncos, but nobody seems to have a good week against the Broncos. So I'm going to kind of give him a pass on that one. The Broncos defense is legit, and the Jets offense just was really unable to move the ball, got completely shut out in that game. And I think that this is a bounce back game versus Tennessee. Their defense has not been great so far this year. They're third worst, giving up points to the fantasy points to the wide receiver. And Corey Davis is still the number 1 option there in New York. And I think that continues next week against Tennessee. And I think that the Jets put a few points on the board in that game against a much softer defense than the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. Don't disagree. Looking into my sit for wide receiver, and I say this with a heavy heart. I kept him instead of TJ Hawkinson, thinking he had a shot to really do something in this offense, and he is an afterthought, and it's a shame. I mean, maybe things change. I'm sitting Robert Woods this week. I really will hate to do it, and I probably will really do it in my league. He's going against Arizona. While they're not maybe the greatest ever against wide receivers, he's just not doing it. He's not getting the targets. He's not getting the looks. It's Cooper Kupp is just the man in this offense. And Stafford making plays downfield. He's got Deshaun to play with, Van Jeffersons of the world. Darrell Henderson a little banged up, but they just put their points up, and their defense really keeps things going for them too. They're a monster on both sides of the ball. We saw them take Tampa Bay to task over the weekend, but I hate to say it. He has helped me out on a lot of years, but Robert Woods this week, I hate to do it. I hope you prove me wrong, pal. I really do. I might even keep you in. I'm trying, but I sit Robert Woods.
Yeah, he's gone from Bobby Trees to Bobby Bushes. It seems like he's just not just doesn't have the trunk that he used to have anymore. I'm gonna go with Hollywood Marquise Brown as my sit for the week. I know he's had a couple of good games, a couple touchdowns this early in the season, and he does seem to be Lamar Jackson's first option in the passing game. But again, we just talked about how good that Denver Broncos pass defense is, and I mean, let's be honest, Hollywood dropped some pretty catchable balls in that game. That game against Detroit this week should not have been close, and he kind of helped to keep it close. I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson's going to lose, any confidence in him or whatever, but we saw last year when Deontay Johnson sort of struggled with drops towards the end of the year, that stuff gets in your head, man. And even for professional athletes, especially for professional athletes, when you start doubting your own abilities, bad things can happen. And against a good defense like the Broncos, I'm not willing to take that risk with Marquise Brown. So he's one of those guys where he's probably a wide receiver 2 flex consideration for you. Hopefully you have somebody better that you can pop into that spot. But if you do, I'm looking to sit Hollywood this week.
Yeah, man. Moving on to tight end starts, and this one is quietly moving up the charts. Used to be a little bit of maybe a no-brainer to some people, but you're looking for a part of a big offense. I'm looking for Dawson Knox, who has really, really, really become a huge part of that offense. While everybody else there gets the yardage, gets the numbers, gets the stats, he's big in the red zone. He's already got 12 targets, 10 receptions, 107 yards, and 2 touchdowns already through 3 weeks. He's going against the Houston Texans, who are one of the worst teams against tight end right now. They have no linebacker play. They don't have a lot of play anywhere on the field, but you see where they're going to just make their efforts to stop a lot of the skill guys. He has been really good, and Josh Allen has always kind of looked for him. He's had some injury issues here and there, and probably a reason maybe they didn't make a trade for a dominant tight end because they know the potential this kid has. Dawson Knox this week against Houston, to me, he's probably going to be a top 5 tight end, top 10 definitely, but I could see him easily crawling up that rung. And by the end of the year, he could even be a guy that really finishes the year as a top 5, 6, 7 tight end.
Yeah, I like Dawson Knox. I always have. I'm going to start your boy Mike Gesicki this week. You just talked a little bit about Jalen Waddle. I know this is maybe a little bit of recency bias. And I kind of thought that when I was researching, my start sits. So I went back and I actually looked at Jacoby Brissett's tendencies as far as, who he tends to target in offense.
Jack Doyle.
So yes, in 2017 and 2019 were the last 2 seasons that Brissett was basically the starter in Indianapolis. And in those years, in 2017, he targeted Doyle and Eric Ebron, who was on the team back then, 190 times.
Doyle got a lot.
It's a decent amount. Yeah. For a
tight
end.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot. Yeah.
in 2019, now Doyle was hurt a little bit in that year.
Yes.
Actually, I think Ebron missed a few games that year as well. And
they were going down the Mo Alley Cox road or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were third string. Trey Burton too, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And Trey Burton had it, there was a point in time where Trey Burton was playable. in your fantasy roster that year. So
Yep.
Jacoby Brissett is just one of those guys who he's not the most talented, quarterback in the NFL, but he's a very safe, he takes those underneath targets and like we saw on Sunday against the Raiders, targeted Mike Gesicki 12 times, had 10 receptions for 86 yards, like you said. And I think that as long as Brissett is the quarterback, I think that Gesicki could be a viable start for you, not just this week coming up, but also, just sort of moving forward.
Yeah, if you don't have a top dog, he should be your guy. And again, I dirted him up last week, and look what happened. He stepped up. So now that you're riding him, he knows where he's at. He's going to be he's a top 10 tight end.
Now that I'm riding, he'll have 2 targets, 1 catch for 7 yards, and that'll be it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Will Fuller will suddenly become the focal point after coming back off suspension. Sure.
All right. So who are you sitting at tight end this week?
Tyler Higbee, who has been a huge part. And last week I was all about him against Tampa Bay. And lo and behold, he did have a very good game. It was one that I would like to stick my chest out. You won't see it here on the audio, but yes, I am doing that. But he, again, he's going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Right now, they have a pretty solid linebacking core. And if they're looking to protect that quarterback so he can get the offense going, Higbee, he could still catch something quick in the red zone, some misdirection, some tight end, block and pop outs, things of that nature. I don't see him getting the yards. He's probably going to be very touchdown dependent this week. So he might only get you 6, 7, 8 points. He's not going to do double digits. I'd be very shocked if he somehow puts up that 15 to 20 point top 5 tight end week again against Arizona and trying to keep that offense going. I'm very high on him. I think Tyler Higbee's going to probably finish in the top 6, 7 tight end as well this year with the way that offense goes. But he might be the guy that just has to stay in and protect this week. So I would sit him if you have a better option.
Yeah, he was actually one of the guys I had as well. But when you said that you were going to take him, I moved on to Jared Cook as my sit for the week.
He was in my top 3 sits. Yeah.
He's not a bad player. I actually really liked Jared Cook last year for the Saints. I think the big thing with him, honestly, is with the emergence of Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and obviously Keenan Allen getting targets in that offense. He's just, I don't want to say he's forgotten about, because he's not. He's definitely made some big plays for them, so far this season, but he just doesn't make enough of them. And I think that, you may have drafted him as one of those late round tight ends that had some upside. And I think he would have upside if Mike Williams, does the Mike Williams thing and gets hurt. I think Cook may slide in there at some point, but at this point, as a 4th option on a team going up against a Raiders team who's not bad against the tight end, they're actually 12th best against the tight end. So they're a top 12 team, obviously. That's what 12th best means. But
12th best or 12th worst? What do you mean?
He's just not doing it. I think that you can, I would honestly rather start Evan Ingram this week than I would pick him up and start him over Jared Cook. Yeah.
And Jared Cook, for those at home that aren't sure, he is 74 years old. Jared Cook.
The Chargers like keeping tight ends until they're, old and gray. Look at, I think Antonio Gates is still on their roster somewhere.
Yeah, they put him in the Ring of Honor while he was still playing, actually, in the same game.
All right, last but not least, let's go to the defenses.
Defense. Well, I never thought I would say that I would really like to use. I mean, I'm not using them, but if you need them, go get them if you're a streamer. The Cincinnati Bengals defense. Yeah. They came off a pretty nice game against a really bad quarterback that used to be a reasonable quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. Now what they're doing is they're going against a rookie coach, a rookie quarterback, and a really bad team. They're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are number 30 in our league against the D. They're probably not far off in your league. You got Trevor Lawrence, who thinks he's the man, and they're calling flea flickers, and it's a shame. I mean, again, that whole team down there, just for years to come until they get a real coach. The quarterback might be legit. It's just a dumpster fire. You finally get James Robinson a little involved. That's nice to see. But again, you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals coming off a very tough divisional game with a huge win in Pittsburgh, I believe that was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And now they get to kick the snot out of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which probably won't be that hard as long as it's not a letdown game and they don't look ahead to next week and things of that nature with confidence, possible double digit. I feel like they probably get like 12 points this week. Cincinnati against Jacksonville. Look to them. Look to the Bengals to be that team. They're the better cat in the jungle.
No, I agree. And Jacksonville has the most turnovers in the league so far. So whenever you're picking a defense, you like seeing them go up against teams that turn the ball over. I'm going to start. I actually flipped a coin on this one. I'm going to start the Chicago Bears defense against the Detroit Lions. I know that the Lions haven't been the walk in the park that a lot of us in the fantasy community thought that they were going to be. Dan Campbell has them truly believing in playing this, old school smash mouth, bite your kneecaps off type of football. And they're not that bad, I will say. But if you go back and watch the games, a lot of Detroit's offense comes in those comeback, down big and needing to come back. Now, last week against Baltimore, they kept the game close. But like I said, most of that was because of Marquise Brown dropping what would be 2 touchdown passes, basically. So they could have been getting blown out in that game as well. I just think that the Bears, in order to win, especially after the drubbing that they took against Cleveland this week, they're going to have to be a defensive oriented team. They have 11 sacks already this year, which is, I believe, 4th in the league. And they're just, in order to win games at this point, no matter who is starting at the quarterback position, the Bears D is going to have to step up. And I think they do that against Detroit this week. But I honestly don't mind starting Detroit's defense against the Bears if the Bears are not available. So I think it's going to be a very low scoring, turnover laden game. So
yeah. Can you flex a defense? Is that possible? But yeah,
super flex. I can do that.
Yeah, right. The Dan Campbell thing. It's literally, it's like McGruff the crime dog meets like The Walking Dead. Like, yeah, they're biting something, taking a bite out of crime, biting your kneecaps. Yeah, they played well enough to win, like you say, based on somebody contributing. Yeah. Either team, either matchup right there. I think, flip a coin. You're probably going to get some points.
All right. So who we sitting?
Well, I'm going to say we need to sit the Chefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, sit them this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Birds are a pretty potent offense. Granted, they had a weird game this past week against the Niners, and they're in the process of playing the Dallas Cowboys as we speak. But Kansas City, again, we talked about that when we talked about starting Jalen Hurts, that they've given up those numbers on offense. They've already given up 4, 8. They're closing in on like 12, maybe 1,300 yards of total offense that they've given up in the first 3 weeks. 29, 36, and 30 points. The Chiefs defense isn't going to get you anything. They may have Honey Badger. They may have some players on that team, but right now they just seem like they can't find their footing on defense. So I would definitely sit the Kansas City Chiefs defense against Philly, because this is going to be a big game for their offense as well, to try to prove that they can be that team. It's going to be in Philly. It's going to be against their old head coach. So there's a lot of things in play right now. Sit the Chiefs against the Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. That's, like I said, that's the highest over under on the week. So I don't think either of those defenses are really going to be in play for you. I am going to sit the what could be one of a top 5 defense in your league. In our league, I want to say there are 3 right now. Sit the Arizona Cardinals. They have shown that they can get some sacks and get some turnovers, but they also give up a decent amount of points. And going up against the LA Rams this week, just not you saw what they did to Tampa Bay's defense this past weekend. The Rams they have weapons all over the place. I know that, Woods and Higbee are on your sit list, but either one of those guys could do it. Cooper Kupp has obviously been just completely unstoppable. And when Darrell Henderson was healthy, he was a top 10 running back. So they just have weapons all over the place. And it's just not a good idea to start any defense against the Rams. So as much as, you may want to think and hope that the Cardinals are, one of those elite defenses because of the amount of fantasy points that they have scored so far, I would not want to do that against the Rams this week.
Nope. Don't disagree. Again, you're right.
All right. So that's it for the week. Before we go, do you have anything else you wanna put out there before we sign off and actually get to sit back and hopefully enjoy this Eagles comeback?
Wow, 7-0. It's not a comeback. It's just, lulling them into a false sense of security. You give our offense a chance. Hopefully, Nicky ball game, Coach Sirianni maybe gave him the ball in the first half. All the good stuff, all the way the Eagles do. The fantasy football community lost a huge, irreplaceable member this week with tags. Mike Tagliere. I've been, again, Pat and I have been playing this, and we started this whole concept with the I guess to say the inspiration from seeing some of the big names and some of the big sites and everybody that does what they do in this community for fantasy football. You play it, but then also to want to give your opinion because you feel that you're good enough and strong enough and smart enough to do it week after week and take it on the nose when you're wrong, like we're doing right now and joking around with screwing up or not getting the right picks in, but having the conviction and the drive to do this. And to see someone this young, he's actually younger than both of us. He was younger than both of us. To see somebody like this have something happen to his wife, to his family, and to his fantasy football family at Fantasy Pros. I've been involved with using a lot of their information over the years. And when Pat and I started doing this podcast, it dawned on me. I've watched YouTube and things of that nature with my daughter for years. That, oh my God, that's right. I can actually watch these guys and see what they're talking about and the input and seeing what goes on. They make you feel like you're there, like you're part of it. And hearing all the stories about the guy, it's really a very heartbreaking thing for Pat and myself. And again, obviously for everybody else that is involved in fantasy football. It just touches home. Our best wishes, again, and Pat, I know you have more to add, but our best wishes go to Mike's family and to everybody that's ever worked with him, that's known him. And again, we take it on the chin a little bit here too, because he's one of those guys that inspires us to think that, hey, you know what, if you apply yourself and you work this hard and you believe in what you're doing, just like in any walk of life, that something like this is achievable, where you can get to be to that point where people believe in you and listen to you. And, obviously you become a success on something as crazy as fantasy sports, fantasy football, of all things, while still being a fan and a father and a husband. Again, our best to your family, Mike, and everybody at Fantasy Pros. Again, we do extend our condolences to you guys.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add. I think you put that pretty eloquently. So I'm going to leave it at that. What I will say is, if you follow us on Twitter, we're going to go ahead and tweet out. They Fantasy Pros and the Tagliere family started a GoFundMe page to, just sort of help the family out in this time of crisis. And we're going to go ahead and retweet that GoFundMe page link. I'm going to continue to do that every day or so, just to get a little bit more exposure out there. We're also going to put the link to that GoFundMe page in the description to this show. So if you're listening to us on Google Podcast or on Apple Podcast or anywhere, you can scroll down through the description and click that link if you'd like to donate. And we never met Tags personally. Like you said, we just started obviously doing this year, but I think I speak for both of us when I say that we both felt like we knew him just from listening to him and watching him over the years. And it really is a sad and sombering day for the fantasy community. So Tabby and that Fantasy Pros community, we wish you the best, and we hope that all of the love that's poured out is in some way helps to comfort you. But I know that it probably doesn't, but we just want to extend our condolences, like Scott said, and let you know that we are thinking about you.
Yep. We love you guys.